Chapter 3, Lesson 3. Welcome back. In this video, we show what to do with overtime in California offices. Please note, if you are an office located in Nevada, you can skip to the next video. In California, hourly employees get paid overtime rates for anything over 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week. When this happens, we do two things. We notate it on our time card tracking sheet, and then we separate the extra hours in our accounting software, Sage. Let's look at how to add it to the time card tracking sheet first. It all starts with a time card. Say we have an hourly employee who worked 8 hours and 46 minutes. The first thing we see is that there are over 8 hours worked, so this employee will receive overtime pay for those 46 minutes. When we are approving time in ProTech Connect, which we will go over in Chapter 4, we will be entering information into the tracking sheet. In our cell for the employee on this day, we will enter the job number, a hyphen, and then the 8 for the 8 hours. The overtime will be on a separate line. Next, let's convert the 46 minutes to decimal form. We will type 46 into our time calculator and press enter on our keyboard to get the number we need. We will press Alt and Enter on our keyboard at the same time to create a second line in the same cell. Then, we will repeat the same job number where the last job of the day was worked, a hyphen, and then the overtime minutes, followed by a capital O and a capital T. The next step is separating out overtime in our accounting software, Sage. When we have overtime, we have to separate the overtime time from the regular hours because they get paid at different rates. We call this process breaking out the overtime. We will log into Sage and open up an 11.2 screen. Let's look for what job number our employee worked at. We will take a look at the time card tracking sheet to find the job number, and then enter it into our job search box in the location tab of 11.2. After entering the job number, we will press the page down button on our keyboard and make sure the record we are in is for the correct month and that the job numbers match. You may need to press the page up or page down button a couple times to cycle to the correct job. Next, we will go into the Dispatch tab and find the time entry for our employee on this particular day. I can see the entry here for 8.77 hours on the same date for February 26th, and we need to break out any extra time over 8 hours on this day. To do this, I will insert a new line below this time entry. The name will auto-populate from the line above, where you can type the employee number. Then, press enter on your keyboard to auto-populate the information and get to the hours box. Take the amount over 8 hours, which is 0.77, and type it on this second line. Then, on the first line, we will change it to reflect 8 hours of regular time. Both of these two lines added together add up to the employee's total hours for the day and will match the time card tracking sheet. Let's save our changes. After we are done saving the overtime adjustment in Sage, I mark the OT line in bold on my spreadsheet as a reminder to myself that this task is complete. If the number is not bold, that is a reminder to myself that I need to go back into Sage later on to break out the overtime. This example was for an employee that worked at only one job that day. But what does it look like if an employee works at multiple jobs in one day? In this example, our employee worked a total of 8 hours and 1 minute on February 26th. The employee worked 2.35 hours at the first job and 4.1 hours at the second job and 1.57 hours at the third job. After his day was complete, he worked 1 minute, or 0.02 hours, of overtime. The ultimate thing to remember is that 8 of his hours will be paid at regular time, and anything over those 8 hours will be paid overtime, so the extra time has to be broken out. First, let's calculate the overtime amount. The total number of hours worked minus 8 equals the amount of overtime we need to separate out. Here I have a total of 8.02 hours that he worked all day. I will subtract 8 hours from this number and I have 0.02 left over. Let's look at the time card tracking sheet to see what we need to do. In my tracking sheet, I will create a new line for the overtime amount. Then, we will enter the last job number the employee worked at, hyphen, and then the overtime minutes, followed by a capital O and a capital T. After that, I subtract the same amount from that last job number. To double-check my work, All of the regular time added together should equal 8 hours. All of the time added together, including the overtime, will equal the total time he worked that day. Now, let's go into Sage and break out the time in our accounting system. In Sage, we will open up an 11-2 screen. Let's look for what job number our employee worked at last, which is where the overtime will be. We will take a look at the time card tracking sheet to find the last job number in our list, and then enter it into our job search box in the location tab of 11-2. After entering the job number, we will press the page down button on our keyboard and make sure the record we are in is for the correct month and that the job numbers match. Next, we will go into the Dispatch tab and find the time entry for our employee on this particular day. I can see his entry here for 1.57 hours on February 26th, and we need to break out the overtime amount that we calculated on our sheet. We will insert a new line below this time entry and enter the overtime amount 0.02 and put it on this second line. Then on the first line, we will adjust it to reflect the number of regular time he worked on this job, which we calculated on our time card tracking sheet. Both of these two lines added together, along with the hours of other projects he worked at, add up to his total hours for the day. After we break out the overtime, we will save our changes. After we are done saving the overtime adjustment in Sage, I mark the OT line in bold on my spreadsheet as a reminder to myself that this task is complete. If the number is not bold, that is a reminder to myself that I need to go back into Sage later on to break out the overtime. In the next video, we will go over how to break out overtime for employees who work in Nevada. If your office is not located in Nevada, you can skip the next lesson. The next thing we will learn will be how to add an employee to the time card tracking sheet. See you soon, and happy learning!